This program is brought to you by Emory University.
So again, welcome to the Georgia Child Welfare Legal Academy, and I hope that you will join me in welcoming today's presenters, our visiting scholars in practice, who include our esteemed moderator, Terry Walsh, partner at Alston and Bird, and again, known to all of us best for his work with the Truancy Intervention Project, and our panelists from Georgia Empowerment, the advocates who will come on up, and we'll call out their names one more time. You can read their bios in your materials, certainly to include Lourdes Aguilar, Chase Chitwood, Brittany Myers, and Frances Smith-Ross. And through this facilitated panel, we'll sort of explore their experiences and perceptions and opinions about care, as well as this issue about stigma, real or perceived, that may attach to that status of being a child who is in the custody of the state. Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We'd like to begin our discussion today by asking each of the panelists to tell us just a little bit about themselves and their experience in foster care. And since I'm not clever enough to think of another way, why don't we do this alphabetically? And I think that begins with you. There we go.
Well, as you know, my name is Lourdes, and I have been in foster care since I was 14 years old. Actually, I came from Mexico. I've been here for 18 years now. And one of the good things I do is advocate for youth and defects as well for myself.
All right.
All right.
Please proceed, Chase.
My name is Chase Chitwood, and I've been in care since the first time I was put in care was when I was 10, and then I went back with my parents after 1 year, and then I went back into care when I was 12, and ever since then, I've been in care for 10 years after that, so a total of 11 years, and I've been to 8 different schools, 6 foster couples, and yes, both of my parents were incarcerated, but I still see them today. And today I live with a church couple that are helping me finish college, and I go to Reinhardt University. I'm a junior there.
Thank you, Chase. Brittany?
Okay, my name is Brittany Myers. I'm 22 years old. I was in care for 8 years. 4 of those years I was in DFACS, and the other 4 I was in DJJ. Also, my experience in care was both good and bad.
All right. Thank you. If you would briefly, and why don't we just start with you, Lourdes, again. You're going to be sorry you ever sat next to me here. Would you react to...
Don't forget Francis.
Oh, I'm sorry, Francis. Gee, it was so simple, and I blew it. Francis.
My name is Francis, and I'm 26. I entered care at the age of 7 all the way up to 18, entering many different group homes, foster homes, shelters, and dormitories when I was young. After graduation, I went to Clark Atlanta University. I now have 2 daughters, and I work in one of the group homes that I reside in when I was little. So I work around foster teams. I'm in the progress of working in the IELP program, and I also do advocacy with empowerment. So I love what I do. I love helping kids, and hope you be inspired.
Thank you. In the same order, I'd like to ask you to react to the film we saw, aspects of it with which you identify or not. Any thoughts that you came up with while watching it? Lourdes.
I would say, wow, like everybody got their own stories and the way they tell them, and everybody got their ups and downs. Like mine would be, my ups would be having 2 wonderful foster parents who are lovable, who just care for me and advocated when I was younger, when I went through the roughest times. The other one would be, my down would be my status. At this point, it's kind of fixed because I went through ups and downs with that as well. Now I got it. It's just rather of me replacing it.
Thank you. Chase?
I would have to say the video is very inspiring. It has a unique perspective that brings the things to light from, from a bad childhood to a good outcome. And I think in today's world, that's what we try to strive for. Is we have, these bad circumstances that these youth fall into place, and we're trying to create good outcomes. There's people just like you that are trying to help them. And from Ted's aspect, from when he was being putting into a different children's homes and things like that, and only knowing people for no more than a year, it's very true. I in my life, I've moved around so much. Sometimes 6 months to a year, every 6 months to a year, I'd be moving around so much that I couldn't even keep up with my own family, couldn't keep up with school. I couldn't even make friends because by the time I did make friends, I was already ready to move. So, and the other aspect was, like, if you get in trouble, it's kind of seen as you're being too disruptive, or like just something that, like Ted was mentioning, that he had poured paint on the wall or whatnot. Things of that nature. Just any disruption that a youth kind of perceives it's exemplified as an issue automatically. There's our youth are put on medication, like being over medicated because of just being a kid. You would think that maybe they would learn from their own kids, and from their own experiences, but for some reason there's a disconnect there. So, but yeah, it was really inspiring to see that.
Brittany?
I felt like the video was very informative and enlightening. I could relate to a lot of his points where he was just saying he really wasn't able to establish a long-lasting relationship, and I was like, well, yeah, on a lot of things I'm just like disconnected, and I really can't keep relationships because of constantly being in different group homes. And for me, I've been in like 12 plus different group homes and YDCs and all YDCs, and I was just amazed how he was able to portray his story, and he made sense and everything connected, and it just gave me a sense of, I can do this, I can overcome this. So I was just amazed.
Thank you. Francis?
I was amazed at how he immediately grabbed the audience attention, how he named different characters that we might see in movies or books, and how they grew up in foster homes. And you never think about that when you was younger, when you was reading these books. And like Brittany said, it was just wonderful. You try to overcome different obstacles, and by me being an adult with 2 children, I still kind of struggle. I want to make sure they have a life that I never had, and make sure they have everything that they want and need that I probably didn't have when I was little. So,
Thank you. By way of full disclosure, I saw all of you nodding as he was talking about those fictional characters. Some of them I didn't recognize, so I'd like to talk to you afterwards and find out who they are. Lourdes, starting with you, do you feel that you were a real part of the family or families with whom you lived?
Yes. And
Whoops.
in 2 of my foster homes, I felt like they were my real moms. They always put me like, no, that's my daughter, no matter who asks, because we went everywhere, anywhere. A lot of people will go, why is she white? I mean, yeah, why is she white and she Hispanic? It's like, doesn't matter. And the lady, Sherry, was telling them, doesn't matter, she's my daughter. Why are you asking? So it's kind of like, oh my gosh. And then my foster mom now, a lot of people ask why I'm with her, and she's like, don't worry about it, she's my daughter, don't ask anymore. Like, she will do anything for me at this point, like I was her real daughter. She will go out her way, that stuff that DFACS don't pay for, she's willing to pay for. Example would be going to Florida with her on spring break, doing all those awesome things with her. She paid for it. DFACS did not pay for it. So it's like, I want her to have a good time and make her feel like my own family, you know. And sometimes I would call her mom and she would go, did you just call me mom? I'm like, yeah. It's like, that's how I feel, you know. But yeah, we do have our ins and buts, and like a mother and daughter should have, but I think that's part of it too. So I love that.
Thank you. Jason,
Yeah.
same question.
I believe I'm a part of a bigger family, and when I mean by bigger family, I've always referenced to it called the forever community, because I never grew up with my family for the majority of growing up and finishing high school and going into college, and most of my family members were both my parents were in prison, and so I really had to seek out for help. I really had to go out in the community, establish relationships through the churches I would go to or the community events. That to me, when I made a connection with someone and I was able to be vulnerable with them and be able to be open with them and get to know them over a period of time, then I was able to have a bigger family. And I still am today, somewhat close still with my family, even though they live considerably far away. But for the majority of my life, I've relied on other people, other families. In fact, a couple of my friends' families, I go to their house all the time just to, say, "What's up, Mom? What's up, Dad?" How you doing? And that to me is really comforting. And not only that, but been able to network with great people that have been able to further my education, and being able to learn how to network at a young age. I believe that it's not a burden. It's definitely a blessing to be able to learn those skills. And yes, it does make you grow up faster, but in the long run, you do achieve more than what you think you would have without any support. So.
All right. Thank you. Brittany?
No. When I was in care, I didn't feel like I was a part of a family at all. And at this point, I live with my mother, and I'm like, there's no connection. And I have a son, and even with him, I have to kind of force myself to give him the love that I didn't have, but it's really hard. So, no.
All right. Francis, please.
Some of my life it was, some it wasn't. I kind of got the love and affection. Once I got older in high school in one of the group homes, it was an all-girls group home, and they treated us like we wasn't from the streets. My case manager that I had when I was growing up, I looked at her like a mom, an aunt. She's now the godparents of my two daughters, and anything I need, I call her at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and she'll answer her phone. Anything I needed, she helped me through college, bought me all my materials for college, and anything that I need from her, if I just have a question, I can ask her, and she doesn't judge me. Just recently, my dad passed. We kind of got a better connection, a better bond when I got older, and he passed about 3 years ago. And come to find out, he wasn't my real dad, but he never told me that. So I try to teach my daughters, love everybody that come in your circle. Never burn any bridges, never hate anybody, never talk bad about anybody. And I try to instill that in them. So.
Thank you. again, we'll go right down the line. Do you feel as though your time in foster care is a stigma, that it put some sort of brand of taint or a blemish on your record? Do you feel it's a asset, a negative? Lourdes.
No, I do not feel that way because I don't really look at what's going on. I look at, like, I want to do this, and what I want to do is accomplish all my goals. And that's not going to stop me from, just because I have a name or whatnot, that's not going to stop me. I'm still going to do what I need to do and achieve those goals, whether they think something of me and whatnot. But I'm just still like a human being, like everybody else, and everybody goes through things when it's time for them to go through things as well. So,
Well, so you've essentially taken a potential negative and made it into a positive. Chase, how about you?
I believe that that my circumstances have really been a positive outlook. But after I've looked back on it during the process of going through that, yeah, it was very negative towards me. But overcoming those obstacles was really what helped me out with that, and finding people that saw me in a good light instead of a negative light. There's always going to be people that have a stereotypical outlook on foster youth. Yes, they're troubled teens, or they usually just hear the negative because the media kind of blows it out of proportion a little bit, or and so. But once you get past that and you're able to bridge the gaps and to let people know that, hey, this was my circumstance. It wasn't like I planned to be put in this position, but once they see that and you're really trying and you're reaching out to other people for, guidance, and they tend to, I guess, recede from that stereotypical mindset. A lot of times, once they've actually seen the positive outlook on it, then it kind of comes into light that, well, this is crazy. I don't even know how you ended up, here when you started out with your parents living in a trailer or in a car. And even my friends, when we talk about our past and our struggles, and we're just amazed of what we can overcome, and how we go through our daily lives and trying to do our go through our careers and going through schools, but the really and truly the humanistic side of things, of just our personal lives, really brings more value to what we are doing, because it brings purpose, it brings the meaning, it brings why we do the things we do. It's not like we just decided that we wanted to go to college and then sit at a front desk for the rest of our lives so we can just make someone else some money. It gives us the drive to change someone else's life, and that's what I really think. It is a positive to a negative. But youth have to really buy into that. They have to see it.
Thank you. Brittany?
My take on it is I could care less, because at one point I was always concerned about what people thought about me and my behaviors, and I allowed that to put me in a place of having low self-esteem, really, really low. So now it's just more of that was in the past, and that's where I'm going to leave it. And to be honest, talking about impact, I've been turned down several jobs because of my criminal background as a youth, and it's just more of like, I just got to keep persevering. I got to keep going. So it's just more like, I care less. If you feel like I'm less than what you want me to be, then fine. I can just keep moving on, enroll in school, and find out how I can end up on top. So that's it.
Thank you. Francis, how about you?
I look at it as a positive situation. When I was growing up, you hear people say, oh, kids in foster care, they was bad, their family didn't want them, their parents was on drugs, this, that, and the other. And I look at it, you don't know what situation they was in. all parents wasn't on drugs, all kids are not bad, you never know their situation. And as growing up, I always look at a situation, how can I turn this problem into a solution? I had to be a leader growing up fast, and I try to tell some of the teens and some of the kids that I work with, your present determine your future. If you acting up in school or not doing what your parents supposed to, or doing what your parents tell you to do, that follows you a long way. When you get old and you have a job, you have to do what your boss tell you or you out of a job. Like one of my students, she has this problem with people telling her what to do. So I had to tell her, all in life, you have to follow directions. I'm older, I'm 26, and I have to follow somebody's directions. So I tell her, like right now you have to straighten up. And she was like, well, I'm gonna straighten up when I get 18. I said, it just don't turn off like a light switch like that. You gotta start now. So it's hard, but like I tell people, you gotta make every opportunity the best of it.
Thank you. Without going into too much detail, like names and so forth, could you tell us a little bit about either good or bad behavior on the part of your foster parents or social workers or DFACS workers or other people of authority that acted on you when you were in foster care? Good or bad?
In between, I would say both. The simple fact that because they had dropped the ball so many times, and I was to the point that I shut myself down. And by doing that, I didn't feel like talking to nobody. It took a lot of work, a lot of people to help me out, and just by talking, expressing myself out with somebody that I really trust and whatnot, kind of helped me out through everything. This is where I am right now. So it's kind of both.
All right, thank you. Chase?
I believe for the people who were trying to help me, for the most part, I had good experiences. There's very few bad experiences. For example, you would have caseworkers that wouldn't stay with you for a longer period of time. There's a lot of that moving around because a lot of the I guess the retention rate for caseworkers is just terrible, and so that the inconsistency of having that really had to rebuild a lot of that trust with them. I knew that they were there for the good of me, but you know, as far as understanding one another, that was a different story. And I think when it really comes down to, I guess it's really hard to relate with either foster parents or group home house parents, or even sometimes the caseworkers, because a lot of them may have never been in the position that I've been in, and so there's some frustration there, and there's some, but at the same time there is there is light in those relationships because they're really trying to help. And I would have say for the most part I've had pretty good experience. I couldn't say the same for my sister because she's had some pretty bad experiences. You have foster parents that take advantage of the system, where you have the foster parents using the money that the state's given and not using it for the youth. And it happens, but it's rare that it does happen. Unfortunately, my sister had to go through that. And also there's other things that can happen. The foster parent may not, even though they come off as a good fit to the government, they may have not been a good fit, or they may have not been safe. And that's the other thing that kind of am troubled about, because I was told by my brother's adoptive mom, who was his foster parent when he was young, that they didn't even get her background check until like a year later. So there's these there's these there's these faults within the system where they're overlooking or they're in such a need to place a child, and so there comes a risk there. So, but for the most part, it was good. Yeah.
Thank you. Brittany?
I would have to say I had both good and bad experiences. I would say more bad than good. I would say that my caseworker and my probation officer, they did the best that they could. And there's been times that they saw something wasn't right, but they really couldn't speak on it, because if they speak on it, they'll lose their job. And I felt, though, in some of the placements that I went to, some of the staff members were unfit to be staff members to handle such a precious case like mine. So, yeah, just both good and bad.
Okay. Francis?
I had some good and bad. Most good. One of the bad situations when me, my brother, and my sister was placed in a single family home, and like Chase said, she used most of the money she had, her kids of her own, and we'll go to school with some raggedy clothes, and they walking around here with Jordans, name brand clothes, and we like, neither one of y'all got a job. So, yeah, like Chase said, you have some that take advantage of the system for their own needs, and then I had a lot of good ones. I got to travel out of town, meet different people, go to prom, nice graduation, different stuff like that. So, and as far as case managers, like I said, I had one of the best case managers growing up, and she's still a big part of my life for right now. And she didn't care if she lost her job, she's going to speak her mind. If I needed something, best believe I was going to get it one way or another. And that's how she do all her clients. She bends her back. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, she'll bend her back to help you. So we need more case managers. Like we said, we trying to help build a better system. We need more thorough backgrounds check on foster families and case managers. Like you say, you have a lot of bad people, you have a lot of good people. And unfortunately, the bad people outweigh the good people right now, so.
All right, thank you. Each of you gets a vote here. And this is asking for either there's no right vote. So if you'll vote, my question I pose is, do you feel, as it respects the bad behavior that you experienced, do you think that if your experience were more open to scrutiny, would that bad behavior likely happen anyway, or would it be, do you think that the various the case managers, the various other folks that you experienced who had an impact on your life, that they would be deterred from some of the bad behavior you just described, or would that have any effect?
Are we still going to order?
No, go ahead, Francis. You obviously have the initiative here.
I always go by this saying, God never puts you in a situation that he know you can't handle. So all the situations I've been in, good or bad, God put me there for a reason. And like I said, I turn anything into positive. And I always tell my story to try to encourage and empower somebody else.
So if the facts in your case were available for scrutiny, would probably not make any difference.
It wouldn't. Like I said, I've been going on that. My dad instilled that in me, and so have other people. So I go by, and I tell my kids to go by the same thing.
Well, so I understand that your attitude would be just the same. Do you think the attitude of the people that you interacted with in the foster system would be the same also? Yeah. Yes. Lourdes, how about you?
For me, it would be the same, because if it wasn't for all that, I wouldn't be learning new things and meeting different people. I wouldn't be able to see what was good or what was bad, who was like next to me, helping me out or following me, or just simple be lovable to me. I would think it kind of, to me, it feels like, I lost my train of thought.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, you haven't lost your turn. You can come back.
Yeah.
Just think. Brittany, I'll take you, please. What do you think?
I think differently if there are a lot of more case managers and staff members sticking up for the children instead of being scared to lose their job, that the system will be much better. Because if you see something wrong and the person's high ranked, you're just allowing the behavior to happen. You're being extremely passive. And for me, I went to care because of physical abuse. And while I was in care, I still experienced physical abuse because nobody wanted to speak up. Well, she's bad, and she's presenting this behavior, so she deserves it. So nobody spoke up, and with me, it hindered my healing process. So if somebody would say, well, they being excessive with restraining her, this might cause her to have a flashback and be worse, and that's what happened. So I feel like people do need to speak up, and if somebody's doing something wrong, you need to be chastised. Because with a child, if they're doing something wrong, what you're going to do? Get on to them from doing something wrong so they won't repeat the behavior. So yeah, people need to stand up for these kids because it makes no sense. And for me, I felt like, well, I left home to be placed in a similar situation, and because I was a bad kid, I deserve to get my hair pulled, dragged, and all that stuff, and that's not right.
So, greater scrutiny as it relates to your experience would have benefited you.
I feel like the behavior that is rewarded will get repeated.
All right. Thank you.
Well,
Chase?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I do believe that just in any working environment, especially if you're working with kids, definitely needs to be dealt with, extreme care and caution. But when there's a problem or a need that's not being met with the youth, for example, like I've had problems with insurance and stuff. Like technically, I'm still in care because I've gotten waivers and whatnot for insurance purposes. But I've heard other stories where kids, especially with the Ameri group that just came on board, where kids haven't, they think they have health insurance, but then for whatever reason, the switch, it's, I'm not sure how often this happens, but since they just made it, but they find out they don't have the same benefits that they had, or that the age requirement has changed, and being informed. There's a lack of communication on the other end. A lot of these youth, what we're trying to do with Georgia Empowerment through the Multi-Agency Alliance for Children is to inform youth about their benefits, to be positive about the system, how to make the system work for them, and then in return become working members of society to give back to the community. Not live within the government, but to get out of government funding and to be able to support themselves. And then to give back to support the cause. We're not trying to recreate this cycle, and we've already just bridged the gap of keeping teen moms together with their kids and being able to end those cycles. And it's still today we still have some issues that come up. We have issues with group home, few group homes, or we have issues with foster parents that take advantage of the kids and the welfare that comes with that, and the dollars that come from that. But besides that, as far as the care that's being given to the child, it's really individually. And when someone's circumstances is already bad enough, you don't want to make it any worse for them. And I feel like, just like I said before, people go into a job for a purpose. People take a job, even if it wasn't the job that you had meant to. I went to the college that I didn't really want to go to, but I made the best of it, so therefore I can continue my education to help other people. Same thing with jobs. People think of a job that, oh, this is something I can make money off of. Well, in child welfare, you're not really here to make money. You're here to change lives. The people lose that the realism, the purpose, the meaning, and they turn it into something that's superficial, and saying, well, I'm here to support myself. And it's great and all, but even at my workplace, I'm here to support the people that, even though I work at a desk, I'm here to support the people who do the hard work. And I think that's what we have to be really enthusiastic about, is that, yes, our part does make a difference, but we have to believe it does, and we have to believe that besides the dollars that we're making, that it's making a bigger change than that.
Okay, we're going to thank you, panel. We're going to take a break, but don't go anywhere. We're going to get all we're paying for here today. How long? 10 minutes, please. So we'll come back at 2:40.
But we're going to go ahead and reconvene. We've got a few more questions, and then we'll certainly entertain your questions as you have them, and see this conversation through to its natural conclusion. So we had to find Lourdes. Whatever. Thanks.
All right, we're back in business here. I'd like to talk for a second a little bit about confidentiality and your experience and your view as far as confidentiality. Lourdes, starting with you, what does confidentiality mean in your experience?
It means to me that you should know everything that you need to know. And then if, let's say, a foster parent is willing to talk about you to somebody else, they should ask you first before telling, oh, this child's going through this and this and this. But you need to come and ask me first to be able to do that. One of the biggest things was when I came into foster care, my first foster parent wanted to adopt my son. And I was like, whoa, hold on. You are doing all this without telling me. You're going behind my back and telling defense all type of lies about me. It's like, I get up every morning to get him ready for daycare and whatnot, because I was still going to school at that point and giving his medications and whatnot. But it means a lot to me, because it's like, you cannot just talk or say something about me without telling me, or do something behind my back. I'd rather know, no matter how hard it is or how simple. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. Just tell me how it is. That's how I feel about it.
Well, before moving down the road here, let me ask you, if something was happening as you described, where the foster parent was talking about adopting your child without talking to you, was there any way for you to communicate your unhappiness, even anger? With whom were you to express yourself?
That was the time. It was so funny. It's the time when I started shutting down and stopped trusting people who was around me, and that's when they had dropped the ball on me and all this stuff. And that's when I started taking everything like, why are you doing this to me? Why me? I was into like this depression where it's like, I don't want to go out of my room. I just want to be in my room. Think about why you're doing this to me. But I really didn't have nobody to talk to somebody about it at that point until I moved from that home. They actually moved me to my second foster parent. Well, I only been through 3 foster homes, so that's kind of helped me a lot too. So my second foster mom was advocating for me and my son, and at that point I was pregnant with my daughter. So she was trying to do what I could do at that point, and it was helpful. And right now I feel so amazing. I still talk to her about it. I go back to her and say, hey, this is what's going on. What can I do? We still keep in touch through Facebook or phone call and whatnot. That's what I love about my foster parents.
Okay. Thank you. Chase, confidentiality?
I think confidentiality is very important. I remember while I was in care, anytime a youth gets put into a new foster home or whatnot, there comes a background, if you will, or some type of description about that child's background that the kid cannot even see or whatnot. So when I'd go to these places to be housed or group homes, even like Goshen Valley where I grew up since I was 14. There was a resume, if you will, that was already given to them, and it had to, for whatever reason, it had to meet their requirements. I don't even know what was on the piece of paper. I would have liked to have known what it was, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But, I think in some cases, it's that's the piece of paper that really sells the kid. That's like, okay, you get to be placed there. Or, if there are foster homes, that last minute placing and stuff like that, you don't really have to go through that. But especially with group homes, they're very tough to get. Some of them are very tough to get in because of requirements and whatnot from different backgrounds or whatever. The state says you have whatever's mentally wrong with you or whatnot. I think we're all a little crazy. We can agree on that. So, but that was the one thing. But the other thing is like, a lot of times, and I would do foster parent trainings and things like that, where they would want to go ahead and jump right into getting into the kid's life and right when they get home, because they feel like, well, I'm providing a need, a service, I'm housing this youth. I want to know who they are. I don't want to let just anyone in my house. And when any kid gets put in that situation, can be overwhelming. I mean, for me, like especially after moving around so much, I just go to my room and just kind of de-stress and think about my day, and then come out and try to interact with people. Some foster parents, be very eager, just like most, that would like to help and get right to it, but they feel sometimes it kind of turns them off if we just go straight to our room after a long day at school or whatnot, chill there for a couple hours and then come out. But I do believe that part is very important. The youth has to be able to be willing to share that. It can't just be a counseling session that just for some reason just magically opens the youth up and you're able to learn about his or her deepest, darkest secrets that are really holding him or her back. And it really does take some time. It doesn't take a month. It doesn't take 2 months. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year or 5 years. I believe that everyone has their the things that either they're ashamed of or that they're scared to tell about someone because it devalues how they are perceived throughout, to the public. And I believe once they get to a certain point and that they're willing to accept themselves, like I've been willing to accept my past, I'm not ashamed of that. Then you're able to bridge a lot of gaps. You're able to help more people than you thought you could help. The things that you go through and the mistakes that you make, that you can teach other people to learn from. That within itself has been a two-way burden and blessing at the same time. And I think that's what people realize while they're in care, or should realize, because you can only do so much more good than bad because if you keep it to yourself, you'll never be able to get it out. I have some family members that hold grudges, they have some deep, dark secrets with family members and things like that, but they're not willing to talk about it. And the longer you hold it in, the worse the relationship gets. So, but I do believe that is very important to have. It's, and all in good timing, they would say, right? So.
Thank you. Brittany, what has confidentiality meant to you in your experience?
To me, it was non-existent. Like I was telling my peers a couple of days ago, I had a situation where my best friend, we've known each other, I've known her since I was 6 years old, and so now I'm 22. And I had left home for a visit, I had went home for a visit from a particular group home. And I found out that her stepmother had told her my business. Her stepmother had worked within the system. So I'm like, how do you know all this stuff without me telling you? She was like, Mrs. D had told me everything you went through. And I was like, oh my goodness. So to me, it's non-existent, because one staff member can just run their mouth and that's it. And I'm pretty sure she never would have thought that my best friend would have told me what she had told her, but still, you don't do that. You're supposed to keep that stuff secret and allow me to tell her what's going on with me. But 9 times out of 10, she was thinking, well, that's her best friend, so I can, tell her what's going on with her. And it was just like, no. Unfortunately, she died, but because I wanted to tell her, like, keep your mouth shut. You don't do that. And if she did that with my situation, of course, she was probably telling other people their business if she knew they had some type of relationship. So that kind of ruined it for me.
All right, thank you. Well, let me ask you just one follow-up. You talked earlier about the physical abuse you experienced. Was there anyone that you felt was an appropriate person to report that to? Or was it the abuser that was really the person to whom you would report it, which would be rather ineffective?
Yeah, it would have been ineffective because the person that did it was of high rank. So who can I tell on? It was a popular JCO, and nobody, like, he did several things to other girls as well, but he was more of like, well, I can do whatever I want and I'm cool with everybody, so nobody would really tell on him. So I couldn't, if I was to tell anybody, I told my mother when I got out of care, but it just would have been ineffective. And like I said, they based all those statements and how they handled me on my behavior, because she's bad and, oh, she's doing that on purpose, oh well.
Well, let me refer you back to the video for a second. Why do you think the speaker used for examples, orphans and foster kids? Why did he go there for examples? Superman, and some of those other people I did recognize him, but why talk? Why, if you wanted to come up with examples, why do you think he picked those folks? Just because they're well known? Or was he trying to suggest that even people like Moses and Superman have come through an experience like this and have done great things?
Are you asking
Well,
me? Like you want me?
Some of my questions are self-evident, I believe. Well, going back to those characters for a second, and I'll start with you. Well, how about we go backwards this time? Francis, start with you. Can you identify with some of those characters? I think the suggestion was that those people that we think of as being special people aren't totally different from all of us, all of you. How would you identify, or with whom would you identify?
I agree with you. As little kids, like the young girls, they look up to Cinderella, Snow White. They want to be these big princesses. They wear these costumes and different stuff like that. And that just lets us know the people that we look up to, the people we want to be like, some of the rappers, some of the fairy tales that we see, they have a story just like us. And they overcome different obstacles in order to better themselves. So if they can do it, why can't us? So that's how I look at it.
Okay. Brittany, anything to add? Chase?
I believe that everyone has a role model to look up to. I mentor kids, and a lot of them like to look at LeBron James or, but as far as like their character, I mean, they play the heroic. They're there to save people. But I think in our reality is we're trying to save ourselves a little bit from our own past, and I think in the sense that just like superheroes, they're able to save. They have to be able to reflect on their past a little bit in order to save themselves in a sense. Because if they're not able to do that, then how are you supposed to be able to take care of someone else, or to save someone else, or mentor someone else? I remember I was talking to a young man. Him and his mother weren't getting along too well because I guess they just didn't work together, or they weren't doing the whole teamwork thing. They were butting heads all the time. She wanted him to clean the house, he didn't. He wanted to clean a room, but she wanted to clean a room, but he didn't. So small things. And when I talked with him, he brought up LeBron James and how he's like, man, I love the fact that he's generous with his money, and he's still able to be with his family and stuff. But that doesn't really say anything about his character. And I told him, like, he has to work with like 20 other guys on the just as a team. You can't just go home. I mean, I'm sure it starts at home. Everything starts at home. Teamwork starts at home. And being able to work together. And I think those are having these role models really bringing to light, like, instead of looking at it as, oh, maybe it may bring superficiality, but it can also bring meaning to ourselves, because we want characteristics that add value to ourselves. I always tell people, money does not determine your value. Yeah, it determines your tangible wealth, but it will never determine your true value as a person. Your character and what you exemplify is what really gives you value as a person, no matter what circumstances.
Thank you. Lourdes, anything to add? Okay. All right. Let me ask each of you to be a legislature of one person. And given the experience that each of you has had in the foster care system, if you could change one thing, one of the rules that acted on you during your experience in foster care, what would you change? Lourdes?
Wow.
You can change two things if you want.
Wow, this is a hard one for me. I would say having a mentor from day one to the day they either get adopted, they'll go back home with mom or whatnot, so they can have like this one person to talk to. Or instead of a counselor who's going to go back and talk to the care worker about whatever, we want to have like that outside people kind of thing, if I made myself clear. But I think I would add that to the system.
Okay. Chase? If you could change one thing in terms of the rules that operated on you, what would you change?
There's so many that I would like to change. I think we would all agree on that. But for one rule, and I think that would probably help tremendously, could be, well, I guess for things of legal nature, probably reducing caseload, that would probably be great. I think, I've already talked to the governor about that. Some of us have, and he wants to reduce it to 14. And so that 14 youth per caseworker instead of 30 youth for caseworker, and I believe that would be such a help, because a lot of times, maybe some kids aren't getting the attention that they need. And I was more of a low risk youth, but I think but at the very beginning stages, every youth is a high risk, and I think the lower the caseloads, the better off the youth are, because they can see their case workers, they can call them, they can actually tell them, hey, this is what I need, and they can get it done, instead of I was like, well, I'll get to you after I finish with this youth, or I've got 5 more that I've got to do, or so I think that would really help a lot.
Brittany, what would you change?
For a caseworker, probation officer, to allow the child to be involved in their treatment plan. One example for me is that certain placements, I had to take my medicine for a certain amount of time to be considered discharged, and I felt like that didn't benefit me none, because the medicine at the end of the day made me worse. So I was numb and like a tyrant, just didn't feel anything. So just allow the children to be a part of the treatment plan, those that understand what's going on, so you can eventually allow the child to move on in life and grow or whatever. But instead of just saying, well, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and it doesn't help the child at all. It's just like you're just telling them what to do, and they have no say-so of what's going on with them.
Francis, anything you would change, or a few things?
If we can be involved in a hiring, firing process. What I'm trying to say is, if group homes or foster homes can reject us, why can't we fire or reject somebody that's not beneficial to us?
Okay.
So we tell a judge or a supervisor, well, your coworker, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. He's not coming, or he or she not coming to see me, or I can't even get one phone call with this person to let them know what's going on with my life. Why they on my case? So.
Okay. Could we, if this is a good time, why don't we go to some questions?
All right.
What?
Oh, we got one right there in the front.
Yes.
Could you, to the extent you're willing, speak a little bit about your involvement in the court proceedings for your cases? The good, the bad, the ugly, what you wish was different, what you appreciated.
Who would like to take a shot?
First.
Okay.
Francis?
Okay.
My court experiences was kind of bad. Badass. Like, my dad, he had a alcohol problem. He was the best dad in the world, but he'll come to court drunk. And I knew it was all because of stress. He was trying to get us all back together and do all this paperwork. But by him being up in age, real old, it was a lot for him. So he turned to alcohol. And that was kind of embarrassing for me. So if there was something I could change, I'd change that. May he rest in peace. But that was it.
Chase?
I would say the majority of my court experiences, I think Cherokee County has a great court. I even worked there for 2 years throughout my senior year of high school and sophomore year in college. And I think they've been very positive. Judge Tony Baker and Mindy Foster that does the group panels. Every time I had a review, it was really positive. I was more of a low risk at the time. I focused on school most of the time, and I believe that even at one point, like my mom came back from prison and was getting her case reviewed at our county for our case. He even let me sit next to her in the defense bench, and I got to hug her for like the first time in a couple of years. It was really cool. When I was still in high school. So I think it really depends on the court system and how personable they're trying to be. I really do believe that my county is trying to be the best that they can, do the best job that they can. They started a foundations group that I've been a part of where they reach out to the foster youth, invite panel members, invite, the judges lead it. And judges are pretty busy people, but they're able to be very personable. And I think, if all juvenile courts were more like that, and being involved and trying to understand and instead of approaching it differently, I think, then that they can get more of a youth perspective. I think a lot of judges tend to overlook the youth perspective sometimes because they want an adult supporter or a professional, whatever that may be. But but that's just my opinion. Is juvenile courts need to be more personable. So,
Okay, Brittany, how was your court experience?
I think I had 2 separate judges, one for DFACS and then one for DJJ. Both of them were pretty awesome, Judge Teskey and Judge Graham. Judge Teskey, back then I didn't see it. I was like, oh man, I hate these people. They always on my case. But Judge Teskey allowed me to slide. He didn't give up on me. And then when I switched to DJJ, I had Judge Graham, and I mentioned before we came back into session with one of the people that sit in the audience, I was saying with Judge Graham, she decided to put me on probation for 5 years within DJJ. So when I was doing stuff still as an adult, if I had not been on probation, I would be in prison now. So they had my best interest at heart. So I'm just like, I'm so happy because it's just like looking at it now at 22, they just helped me with so much, and they allowed certain things to happen. And if they didn't allow certain things to happen, like with the being placed on probation for 5 years, like I couldn't be sitting here talking to any of you guys. So I'm grateful for them, and it was a pretty good experience on that aspect.
Anybody else in terms of court experience, good, bad?
I would say both, because I have disappointments. Because I was like so happy to go to a court because I was able to see my little sisters. That's the only reason I went, because I got to be able to see my baby sisters. I really didn't care much about my mom. I'm sorry to say that, but it's like I love them to death, regardless. But she's still my mom. I still love her and all that. But the court also saw that I was better off without my mom, because if I was still with my mom, I would be dead or somewhere that I would not be right now. And thanks to them, I'm like right here talking to y'all. So it's kind of both.
Well, we're glad you're here. Who else?
Did any of you have attorneys representing you in court? If so, can you talk about what they did that was effective or not effective, and were they your guardian ad items and attorneys, or just the guardian ad item?
I had a
Corky, do I need to repeat the question?
I'm getting it on the
Okay.
I had an
Brittany?
attorney for all my 24 juvenile cases, and she was really proactive in my case, and she really took the time. Like before we go into the courtroom, she'll be like, "Well, Brittany, this is what you're going to do. This is what I'm gonna cover while we're in court." So when I went to court, it's like I was informed of what was going on. So my attorney, she did her job pretty well. I can't think of her name, but she's been stuck with me for years. When I was in care, I can't even remember her name, but yeah, it was great. She was great.
I had an attorney, but I never got a chance to meet him. Like once we go to court, we do like a briefing, and then they go into their own room with the judges, and then they come back out, talk about a whole bunch of stuff, and we go home. So I really didn't have a one-on-one with any of my attorneys.
Well, you didn't really feel like you were that much a part of your own case.
No, not when it come. I mean, I guess I think it was basically on my little sister because she was going through adoption. One of the ladies that I stayed with when I was younger, well, really me, my brother, and my sister, we stayed with her grandma, and then she used to let us spend the night, and then she ended up trying to get us. But I think it was basically on my sister, but she was too young to understand what was going on. So,
All right, anybody else?
Of me,
Yes.
of me having one lawyer, I had like 3 because of the fact that they were looking at different parts of my case. And the best part of that was that Mr. John, I like love him to death because he was like right there with me through panel reviews and everything, because he would know what was going on and he would be there in court with me talking about, do you understand this? Do you understand that? Do you want this? Do you want that? Like he asked my opinions, and as well the other ones. I really love all 3 of them because they're like, oh my gosh. So what do you want? Like, do you want to go back to your mom, or do you want to see her? Do you want to do all this? And they actually came to the house at one point to talk to me about different things, which was pretty nice. I like them.
It worked much better for you when you were part of your own case.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that. Yes,
It just
Brittany.
goes to show that like one person can have a big impact on one child's life, because it's just more of like with our situation that our attorneys were proactive in our cases and things worked out perfectly. So whoever decides to go into trying to be a caseworker or whatever, just take that into mind, that you inspire us and y'all have a great impact on our lives, instead of just thinking, well, I'm coming here, whatever I say to them doesn't matter. Just kind of keep in the back of your mind that whatever I say or do or how I treat them will impact them forever. Because now I'm 22 and I just think about all the good things that did happen, the people that did take out the time to talk to me, and just like, wow. Because when you're in care, for me, I was just more like, man, they don't care. And then as I get older, I'm like, well, she did this, and if she wouldn't have done that, then I'll be in a bad predicament. So it's both good and bad. It's just wonderful.
And then,
So, go ahead.
and then I want to add to what she said. Some people do make an impact on your life, like the case manager that I still have in contact with, and then there's another case manager. He's like a I forget what you call them when you take kids to visits and stuff on the weekends. I forget what it was, but like when I got older and then I was able to provide, like I gave back to them, like during Christmases, so I take them out to dinner and buy big gifts and just tell them thank you. And it wasn't cheap, because I'm not a cheap person, so they know. But when you able to give back to a person that did so much for you, it make you feel good. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I, as your hypothetical lawyer, need to realize that it is your case and you need to be involved in that process, and I need to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Yes. Yes. please.
I've heard from everybody that you still have connection with your birth family. And whether it's a good connection or an okay one or whatever. What do you think would have been a good way of making that better today? Were you able to visit with siblings? You know, I hear that you only were able to hug your mom when you were at court, and you went to court, you saw your sisters. What could DFACS have done, or the private agency have done, to make that relationship better? Because y'all are still in connection anyway.
Good question.
For me, when I was younger, my mom, she abandoned us when I was 7. My brother was 6, and my sister was a couple of weeks old. So my dad took on to the role as a mom and a dad. And then, like I said, over the years, it became problems and stuff. So, and I think like way before then, like our family was already broken. Like, I don't even really know my family. The only ones I know is my oldest brother on my dad's side. My dad just passed. And the brothers and sisters from my mom. So we try to stay together and keep the family going. So it just depends. It wasn't really anything defects can do as far as my family side, but they try to keep me, my brother, and my sister together. As far as visits, like I moved to Barnesville, my brother was in Tar Boulevard. They try to keep us together and try to make sure we seen each other. And I stayed in contact with my dad, and like I said, when I got older, when I went to college, our relationship became real close before he passed. So, with my mom, that's another story.
Well, so the system did a pretty good job.
They
in
did
your
the best
case.
they could with me,
Okay.
my brother, my sister.
Lourdes?
In my case, it would be they have dropped the ball. Like at this point, my mom just refused to see me. She just don't bring my sisters around me. My granny had opened the door, say, hey, they can come and spend the night with her sister and whatnot. And she even told the judge, hey, her sisters can come over anytime, whenever, you know. I don't mind that, you know. But my mom just really just closed the doors and say, can't do this anymore. So it's kind of like, wow, now I got to wait until they're 18 so I can be able to see them. So defects I think defects kind of dropped the ball there, because it's like, why would you do that to your daughter? Just let her have that chance to see them. You know, if you don't want to see them, let her see her siblings, you know, kind of moment. But I guess they stopped trying after she stopped answering the phone and not sending the letters back and whatnot. So it's kind of like, I gotta wait now.
So your sisters were reunited with the girl.
The way that it went down was that she left me behind and she took the other three and actually had a family member keep them. So it's like, wow, you're just gonna do all that, but that's how it worked.
Chase, your situation was more complicated with your parents in prison.
Oh, yeah, it was, when I was 14, my mom had went back to prison, and so I didn't see her at all until, not really a whole lot. You know, I'd go to the county jail when she was in town and see her. It was really rare if I did. Her and I would, you know, exchange letters, do the same thing with my dad for the longest time. And both of my parents got out about the same time, right when I graduated. And then my dad kind of went back into prison right after I graduated, so from high school in 2011. So, and my sister, I do have a biological sister, and I have a half sibling. His name's Kevin. He's half Indonesian. And both of them got adopted. I didn't get adopted. My sister's parents wanted to adopt me, but at the time, I just really didn't want to move anymore. I knew I had good benefits with the state, pay for my college. I know even if I did get adopted, I could still get those benefits. It's just be harder for me to get them. My sister, you know, she was able to still get them, but it was still kind of tough for her to get them. But like with my parents and whatnot, recently, you know, I made the decision that once my parents, if they were ever to get out of prison, they were able to clean up themselves, then I would, you know, at least attempt to try to slowly mend that relationship. I've done so with my mother, so I see her, every year or more frequently. And then my dad, he had just gotten out of prison 3 weeks ago, like literally this past month. So we're just now bridging that gap. With my sister, she just started her first year in college. So she lives in like Lawrenceville. That's where her adoptive family is, and trying to see her was kind of a challenge because how far the drive was. But my mom, she lives about 2 hours away. So, you know, it can be really, really difficult if your parents are in prison and your siblings want different things. You know, like I said, my siblings wanted to get adopted. So that kind of rendered me from actually seeing them as much as I'd like to. Or even if they were indifferent, a lot of times they would split us up. When we were in foster care, we would go to different housings, which kind of stunk because, we couldn't live together. I think it happens a lot to siblings, unfortunately, because one house may have room for one, another house may have room for one, but they don't have room for two. Or that you go to a group home and that's your last resort and they only take boys. you can't have your sister, hanging around a bunch of dudes. So, so I had some interesting circumstances with that, but I think all in all, though, we were able to still stay in some good connection. And I don't see them as much as I like to, but we know we love each other, and that's all that matters. As long as they're doing good and taking care of themselves, then I think we'll be fine. So. Yeah, yeah.
Brittany, anything to add or comment?
DFAC's goal for me was to get me back home, but my mother wasn't ready. She was dealing with a lot of stuff mentally, and she wasn't equipped to take care of me. So, yeah. I had to kind of be forced with DJJ. They was like, well, I was in a Christian group home, and they was telling her, well, she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She needs to go home. So that's how it worked out. I was like, you're going back home. Mrs. Myers, this is what you're going to do. The end. So she was kind of being difficult, but at the same time, I understand, because even though I was in care, it still caused trauma for her on top of what had happened before I had got into care. So.
I've already spoken to Brittany and to Francis about this. I'm a member of the Citizen Review Panel for the DeKalb County Courts. And I know that many counties don't have these, but I was wondering if either Chase or Lourdes had citizen review panels involved in reviewing their situations every 6 months. Yeah. And if so, was that at all helpful, and how do you view that process?
All right. We have panel reviews that, and they should have them in every county. And when I started going to the one at the Cherokee County Justice Center, I think it was maybe when I was about 14, 15, something like that. When I actually started going to the panel reviews, and I thought it was very helpful. It was kind of overwhelming at first because you have a group of people that you're not familiar with. You only see them maybe twice a year, and but every time I went, I always had good review because I always did what I was supposed to, stayed out of trouble, focused on school. For other people, not so much. Actually, when I was finishing up high school, I became friends with them. I would actually sit on the review panel and do it, and I like that. I do believe, though, it would be nicer to have former foster youth on the panel. Mm-hmm. I understand that a lot of the people who do sit on review panels have, either they're not working as much or retired, or they're trying to do something to give back, which is great in that regard. And also I've seen that majority females work the review panels. It'd be cool to see some guys out there to do something. I mean, I was the only guy, and I was the youngest sitting on the panels. And I just volunteered just to listen or give them, information on benefits and care. I do believe that all the panelists need to know about the benefits of care. A lot of them do not. When I went there my first time, I'm like, do y'all not know about the $10,000 that the state's supposed to give the kids and how you're supposed to get it and all this other stuff? And because they're there to inform the youth. I mean, by the time we're going to these panel reviews, that's when the time we're looking at these benefits. So it's very important to know those services or what services can be provided. A lot of times, unfortunately, when I went to some of them where I've reviewed some of them, all they would talk about is, all right, did you get your dental, your medical? That was the first part. You got all the boring stuff out of the way, and then you got to the meat of the problem. And some of those could have been difficult. You'd have the youth that kind of shut down, don't want to talk as much, or you have the parents that are defensive all the time, or you have some that are just middle ground people. Or you have families that are feuding with one another a lot on that one. But I think, and all that, I really do believe that, and I know that the courts really try to minimize the micromanaging of that, checkups and all that, and what that's going on. But what I do really do like is that youth are able to say, all right, it's my turn to talk. Everyone get out of the room. This is me and the panel time, and I want to tell it like it is. And then that way they, like if a kid doesn't want to go back with their parents, they can tell the panelists there. I mean, it's at the courthouse. The youth are able to get what, they would feel that would be safer for them.
So you felt you could speak freely to the review panel?
Oh yeah. After I got to know them after the first year, then it became evident that okay, I'm doing well. They know I'm doing well. I feel comfortable where I'm at. And that gives me time to think about what I really, really would like to have had happen. But I think if not every county has one, they should have one. So.
Francis, anything to report in your experience?
That was pretty good for me. Like Chase said, for me, sometimes I couldn't express certain things in front of my dad, especially when he came under influence. When he left the room, I was able to discuss certain things that was going on. My brother, he never talked about anything. He was always that shut down person. So I always did the talking. My youngest sister, she was too young to understand. And when I was young, way younger, the food was good to me. I was able to get out of school early, eat some good food, and they had video games. So that was fun to me.
The system worked for you then, too.
Yeah.
Yes, we did have one. Like I said before, my lawyer, John, was always there with me. So it was kind of fun because he would always ask me, did you understand what they said? Or, do you want me to say something for you? Or do you want to say it by yourself? Are you nervous? Because I was that type of person where I was just quiet. I was just the quiet person. I was like the mouse. But he would always take me out and say, hey, do you need anything? Do you want me to tell them anything? I'm like, they kind of know everything because you already just took me out and just asked me too many questions. But yeah, it's kind of like playing 20 questions. It's like, have you your doctor's appointment? What school do you go to? I'm like, that's the only way they can get me talking at that point. And then I got comfortable and all this. My mom was in the panels. It was overwhelming because my mom was there and I didn't want to see her at that point because of the stuff we had been through, and she was blaming me for a lot of other things, and I'm like, that's not how I want to remember my mom, So then she stopped coming, and then everything was all right, where to a point I can just say, okay, well, I can just speak my mind. I didn't have to shut down or be quiet or whatnot because I already knew what I wanted. I already knew a lot of things, and I knew the people that was there too, so it's kind of good.
I really know, when you're in here and you feel like you're not being heard. For example, Brittany was talking about the guy being too powerful and nothing would happen. And also, Francis, you spoke about, being a part of the hiring and fire, and it's all about supporting kids. It's when you weren't being heard or you really wanted something changed, I know you had connections, but who did you talk to? Is there a confidential number that kids could call to make a report or anything?
For me, I go ahead a lot of times. It was my case manager. Like I said, if I had a problem and it was 2:00 in the morning and I was in a group home, I'm gonna sneak upstairs, use the phone, I'm gonna call her, and I'm gonna let her know what's going on. But for me, that's my go-to person. And right now, that's my go-to person. Like the lady that adopted my sister, she's like an aunt to us, but it's certain things I can't tell her. Like I was telling her that my case manager, she no longer works in DFAT. She works with inmates now as a social worker. So I was telling her, when Miss Sarah Bless, had gave me the opportunity to come on board, and I was asking her about different opportunities and just advice and stuff on volunteering. She was like, "Oh no, you shouldn't volunteer without getting a paycheck, 'cause they go pay you to volunteer." I said, "That's why it's called volunteer." For real, I said, everything is not about a paycheck. I said, "I love to get my time back." She was like, "Well, you got 2 kids and you need to think about me." I said, "I got a job. They dad helps. He's very involved." I said, "But I like to volunteer. They're just in my spirit." So it was just so funny. She goes back to her supervisor, well, her old supervisor, my case manager, old supervisor, not knowing that I know the supervisor too. And was like, "I thought Miss Monica," well, I don't say the name, but anyway. "I thought Miss Monica had quit." So the supervisor come back and text me and was like, "You know, this lady is trying to badmouth Miss Monica and this, that, and the other." So it's just crazy. Like, certain stuff you can't tell people. It's just people not. And she's in foster care. She's a foster parent. And the only thing you doing is thinking about a paycheck. So.
Who else? How did you communicate, or how could you have communicated if you had a problem that, or if something good you wanted to applaud? To whom would you report? Is there a 800 number you can sneak upstairs and call?
Well, I would say it's probably going to be your caseworker, because that's what you're told to do. They're supposed to give you their number and things like that. And when they do see you on a month, that's when you kind of are able to have one-on-one time. For me, I was pretty hard-headed, well, in a good way. I was always wanting positive things in my life, different opportunities, like get involved in school, go do sports, do clubs, and if I felt like, if I wasn't doing what I was supposed to, that's what I felt like. I'd rather be at school than be at home, because I'm just one of those people. I'm there if I'm at home for an hour, I freak out, and I'm like, okay, I need to be doing something. But if I wasn't getting something that was furthering me or something that I'd like to do, I'd let them know. Or if there was something wrong in the household, I'm like, I really don't feel comfortable with this, or I don't like, this, or I don't like the fact. I remember at the group home I lived at, we had some communication problems that I thought that we had, because it just felt really it didn't come off genuine sometimes when they're trying to help you out, when they haven't been in your shoes a little bit. I mean, sometimes you just hear the same stuff. Oh, okay, this is what you need to do. It's like you go through a whole process. All you gotta do is focus on school and all this stuff. But there's all this internal stuff, stuff that makes you, get upset, or how do you manage it. And a lot of times, like, they'll tell you, well, this is how you de-stress or whatever. But I'm like, well, maybe that works for you, but not for me. I need something else. I don't need pills or anything, but I need to do something else. So, I've always been the type of person that, you need to stick up for yourself. Some people, unfortunately, especially at a younger age, because we're looking up to older people to guide us. But by the time, if we don't have parents and whatnot, we're kind of squandering around. It's like you're in school and you're just piddling your thumbs and not really doing the work, almost. And you're just afraid to ask even what seems to be a dumb question. I always, I always try to be open, but if I did have like a problem, I would just call my caseworker. But the other issue that I always heard was that it was hard to get in contact with caseworkers, because 9 out of 10 times they're not going to answer, and then you're going to have to leave a voicemail, or their voicemail's not set up or full or whatever. So, and then you're just kind of sitting out in the ocean, like on a raft, just like, okay, just leave me here. I'm just going to do my own thing. So, yeah, but I know that probably happened with my sister a little bit, but communication is really important. I think everyone struggles with that. Every business struggles with that, but hopefully we can make it better. So.
Brittany, anything?
Um,
down there?
With DFACS, my caseworker, he did the best that he could, and with DJJ, my probation officer. And then it's gonna sound kind of funny, but one situation when I was in a group home in Adairsville, then I was experiencing physical abuse. My mother came down there, and she went to Georgia State for real estate and graduated. And after she saw all those scars, like if it gets really bad while I'm in care, she'll type up paperwork and she filed charges against the group home. So, and they shut down. So, yeah. So.
For me, it was so different at the beginning. I could not, like I said before, I was shut down for the same reason. My first foster parent was like doing all this stuff, and when I'm trying to talk to my caseworker, she would listen. I'm like, this is kind of one-on-one thing. And one day I had sent out an email to my caseworker with all what she was doing to me and all this stuff. So for some reason, I don't know how she did it, she went into my email account and saw the email I had sent to my old caseworker. I'm like, hold on. I'm like sitting at the dinner table doing my homework right now, and I'm like looking at the computer. I'm like, isn't that my email? And she's like reading through it. I'm like, hold on. So the other way I could only talk to her is when she came down to the house and took me out to dinner or just take a little walk at the park, somewhere where she's not around. So that's the only way I could talk to my caseworker.
There are no more questions. I think we're really spot on time.
Well, thank you, panel.